they are then told, well, you're not a local, you don't really belong here, we can't give you this. But there's also the local, the national politics that come into play. But other things, you know, that people, talking about migration, people who live in Marikana, they've lived there for a long time in the informal settlement, some of them. So they are migrants in the sense that they are not Tswana speaking, but they're actually not migrants in the classical sense of migrant worker or a migrant. They've lived in Marikana for 20 years. Marikana has been their home all these years. But it's interesting that a lot of them, prior to the massacre, they considered Marikana their home, even though it's an informal settlement and blah, 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 but they considered it their home. But after the massacre, people who have not even gone back to the Eastern Cape for 5, 10 years, after the massacre, again changed. They were like, Marikana is not our home. We don't belong here. Our people are being targeted by these people. Marikana is not home. We need to go back home. And so some of them, they went back home for the first time to attend these funerals and to visit families that they've not seen in a long time. So I do think that there's a lot there too. But on the vulnerabilities of women, it's not just even women actually who are the vulnerable ones, but even kids. When I was talking to some of the women again, they were telling me that, well, our kids, they sleep closer at home. So when they start school, guaranteed the first 2 years of their school lives, they're going to fail because there's no closer schools in the community. It's only Tswana schools. So the first year, they're trying to grasp Setswana. I mean, even in the community, there's not a lot of people who speak Setswana. So it's not easy for them to pick the language. They only learn it at school. But when they come back home to ask for help from parents, parents don't speak Setswana. So in a way, even kids who are attending schools, they can't speak the local language, and by default, they fail. Well, not default, by design, it looks like they fail, because these people have been living in Marikana for over 10 years, 20 years, some of them. Yet there are still no schools to accommodate those who don't speak the local language. Yeah, and I think your really comments on the politicization and consciousness that's completely shifted of the workers and the women in the community. So I take that.
Thanks, Asanda. I mean, you're painting a really complex picture of a kind of dynamic between being local and being migrants, being here and not being here, being accepted and not accepted. I've got a kind of, I see there's still a lot of hands, but I've got a question that comes really from an earlier reply by Asanda, and that has to do with almost the economics of the settlement. Because a lot of the informal settlements that we are accustomed to studying are made up predominantly of unemployed people, people making a living really in very difficult circumstances, and very slender livings, if you like. Marikana, in contrast to that, is a community of formal sector earners, mine workers who are bringing back a wage. And I'm wondering what difference that has, what difference that makes to the economy of a settlement. And what you've described, Asanda, is a settlement that, as you say, has got nothing, where everything still has to be done. And yet a lot of formal sector wages are coming into it. And I wonder what the kind of interplay is between that and whether this kind of mining community informal settlement is different from other informal settlements or not. So that's a question from me. Then at the back there's a question.
Thank you, Asanda. I just need for you to help me to paint a picture a bit, because I've seen Marikana being used as a stage for people who are having their own agendas. We've seen politicians going there, your ANC, your DN, EFF. We've seen your unionist, your AMCU, your NU. We've seen religious leaders. I just need to know, what has the corporate South Africa done in order to react to the Marikana, especially women? Because in this country, women have managed to rise to top position. Most of the JSE listed companies are today being led by female executives. And today, even us, especially me as an entrepreneur, when we are looking at this organization, the CSI investment money is there's always a budget for females. But I haven't seen any influential black business women who are always in the media space talking about women empowerment, being visible in that space. Can you just paint the picture?
Thanks for that. Can you switch off your light? This hand over here.
Thank you, Asanda. My name is Noah, student at Department of Political Studies. Marikana, Marikana story, I find it very, very interesting because it shows now another side of South Africa, which means complementarity, solidarity between men and women in the household. It's different from what you used to hear about violence, about rape in the household. Here we find partners in poverty, partners in vulnerability. I don't know, Asanda, if we've reflected much on how Marikana is inspiring now the South African society in terms of building strong, sustainable families. If you reflected on it, because it's very, very important, how we can shift our discourse from negativity, to men and women, and towards positivity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right up at the back in that corner. Yeah.
Morning, my name is Ntatise. I'm from Marikana. I lived permanently in Marikana for about 14 years now. My father was a miner, but unfortunately he had to leave. What I want to know is in which parts of Marikana did you conduct your research? And mostly what I would like to know is that you said everything is wrong in Marikana. So I want to know, who are we exactly blaming? The government or Lonmi? And again, I would like to know, because you said that if people are looking for proof of residence in Marikana, they will be asked if they support AMCO or NAM. So now I want to know, do they ask minors or everybody? And then as for, you said something about the clinics that sometimes they won't help you because you're not speaking in Tswana. And then believe me when I tell you that most people in Marikana, they kind of, in a way, transformed from speaking too much of Tswana, but then we are now like, it's like we transformed to speaking in Xhosa now. So in the clinics, they don't really now ask whether you speak Tswana or what. And again, you said something about the learners having to learn Setswana when they go into school. Yes, it's true. There are few schools in Marikana whereby they teach other languages like Xhosa and all that. But then I know one particular school whereby they teach Xhosa. And you said, I'm saying this because you said something about kids from Eastern Cape coming and come to learn Tswana. So I just wanted to kind of correct that, because there are not many schools in Marikana. I attended there for like from 2000 to 2006, but then mostly, believe me, we adapt. I'm not a Tswana person, I'm Sotho. But then within 2 months, I could adapt to speaking Setswana and understanding what the teachers were saying. And then even the Xhosa students, the Xhosa learners coming from Eastern Cape, believe me, they do adapt. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Nikki Lowe from Green Africa Foundation. I just want to follow up on the question about agrarian sustainability that I think Gavin asked. And my question is, are the people actually being proactive and planting food gardens?
Right, okay, and I think I can see time is running out, but Asanda, can I give you the opportunity to
respond to some of those.
Okay. Thanks again. Are the people planting food gardens? They've tried. I think I have a slide. Oh, actually, this slide over here. Here they're building a crash, and part of this crash of the yard they wanted to build, but lawnmen, and I think this answers someone else's question about corporate involvement. So after they built this shack where they were going to use as a crash, lawnmen came and they said, "Wait, stop everything. We're going to bring engineers here. We're going to fence this place, stop everything. We're going to bring geologists, they're going to do A, B, and C." They made these big promises. The women were very excited. They stopped everything. They stopped their garden. Lawnmen disappeared. Every time when they're called, "We're coming, we're coming. Wait, we're just focusing on the commission, we'll come." So they tried, but it has not moved much. Nothing's been done because of these promises that come from corporate, and they never materialize. But in their small yards, some people actually do have gardens, but those are individual gardens. And then Tati said, very interesting stuff you've raised, and thank you very much. Now, Setswana and Sesotho, I don't speak the languages well myself, but I know that they're very similar to each other. I don't think it would take me a long time to learn Setswana. But as a Xhosa speaker myself, it's taken me over 4 years to learn just the basics in Setswana, and I interact with Setswana. So I don't know if that holds, because these are two different languages, very different languages in fact. And access to clinics, I think, when you are not part of the marginalized groups, some of these things, they just go over your head. You don't see them, because you don't experience them. These women have experienced these things. When they go to the clinics, they have been treated this way. I know one woman, I had to convince her to start going to the clinic, but she was deeply traumatized by her experience in the clinic, where she was humiliated in front of everyone, forced to speak Setswana, which she did not even speak. And she decided to go to a clinic nearby in Moinoi, but now in Moinoi to take a treatment because she's diabetic and she's got high blood pressure. But in Moinoi, after a couple of months visiting Moinoi and getting good treatment from the nurses there, the security guard saw her getting off the taxi, and the security guard said, "Are you from Marikana? You're not supposed to come to this clinic. Let this be your last one. You're not allowed here again." So she stopped taking medication because of that. So I don't think we can say, we can't negate people's experiences. This is how some of these women have experienced treatment. This is the kind of treatment they've experienced from the nurses, and we can't say it's not true just because we've not experienced it, because you're in a privileged position when you speak Sesotho, because it's very close to Setswana, you can move around the two languages. And then you asked about the minors. Are they also asked when they go? It was mainly women who said they ask us. The minors can always go and intimidate the people in the Sanko office and say, "We want the papers," and they get them. But mainly the women, and the women really are the most marginalized. They don't have any form of voice when it comes to these political guys in Marikana sometimes. You said, who is to blame? You asked who is to blame. I'm not saying I'm blaming the government. I'm saying this is the situation in Marikana. The government needs to do something. It's part of their responsibility. In fact, some of the things that are happening in Marikana, housing, it's something that's enshrined in our constitution. Healthcare, it's in our constitution. And whose responsibility is that? Who is the custodian? Government obviously has to do something about that. But also, I think we cannot extract mineral wealth underground and not do anything for the communities. You go to Marikana, there's pipes, electricity, water, everything. It's circling the community, circling it, not inside the community. So I think that's something that Lonmin needs to take some form of responsibility too. We cannot say they don't have to because no, you can't have you cannot develop your own side and exploit people and not invest in any way in their lives. But also some people have come back and said, well, but they're giving them houses now, but these houses, you are earning 7,000 rands max, and you have to pay 2,000 rands from your pocket, or an extra income that you can't even afford from your pocket in order to have these houses. So even some of the things that they are doing, I just think it's not enough. And then, which part of Marikana? I did mine in Vonakop. So Vonakop is divided into three. There's the Umzini part, and then there's the new stands at the back, and then there's the front stands, which are not really part of Umzini, they're not here either. So I conducted it around that area, not in the town itself, where the migrants, where the workers live, mainly, where most of the workers in the informal communities live. And you asked Noah about families, the configuration of families, if South Africa is lived. I mean, I think in Marikana, the configuration of family is very different. To start off, I was very shocked. So I've been visiting these women and they talk about guys. They're like, my husband. And this one time I'm introducing this woman and say, oh, her husband is a mine worker. And she's like, no, not like that. It's a different kind of a husband. It's not my real husband. So I think the way in which families are constituted or constructed in Marikana is very different from how not completely, but I do think that there are differences. But also, I mean, it's something that people have talked about. I don't like sensationalizing. It's that Marikana workers, again, the men, they have two families in the villages and the ones in Marikana. And some women actually didn't even know that some of their partners are married in the villages. They only learned about these other marriages when they went for these funerals after 2012, after the 2012 massacre. Yeah, I think the question is very big, but I think in the economics of Marikana also something we need to take into consideration is the wage split that is split between multiple households. People always talk about